Thank you for tuning into the Weights and Plates podcast. I am Robert Santana. I am your host, along with Trent Jones, my co-host.
Good evening, friend. How are you today? This evening?
Pretty good, man. This evening here in Phoenix, I'm pretty good.
Yeah, if we couldn't tell, yeah, a little bit of yawns there, but
yeah,
good. Well, I hosted I don't know if you want to call it a meet or not. I'm going to call it a meet. It was a strength lifting meet in my garage this weekend.
Yeah.
It really wasn't a meet because there was nothing official about this. There was nothing sanctioned about this.
Right.
We generally followed the structure of strength lifting. However, I was the sole arbiter of, whether a lift got passed or not.
Yeah.
But we had a good time. Three of my clients that happened to be local came up, and I had one guy who was remote who did all of his lifts in a gym, and so we just did a little impromptu, meet, and I hopped in there and joined him, and it was a good time. We had 3 plate PRs at this meet, so all three lifters added a plate to at least one of their lifts. So we had one guy who squatted 405 for the first time. It's pretty exciting.
Mm-hmm. Right.
We had a guy pull 6 plates for the first time. It's pretty nice.
Right.
And one of is she my youngest lifter? She might be my second youngest lifter. I have a very talented woman that I coach who's in college, and she's been lifting for about a year now. I think it's been right at a year.
Right.
And she squatted 3 plates for the first time. And it was fast. I think I sent you that one.
Yeah, I saw that. That was pretty good, man.
Yeah, she's a great athlete. She was a competitive swimmer in high school, and she's explosive. She's strong. She's got the build for powerlifting. She's short. She's probably 5'1", and she just has the attitude. She has that attitude where she just attacks the weights. And I never had to teach that to her. That's something you have to teach some people, but she just does it. She's got the competitor's attitude. When she gets on the platform, she focuses and she puts 100% effort into it. And it's wild. She is not the typical person that I train. If she keeps going, she's going to squat 4 plates. It's going to take a lot longer, but she could definitely squat 4 plates. I'm not going to say easily. It's not easy, but she could absolutely squat 4 plates.
She has to stay on it, time.
Yeah, that's right. Yep, absolutely. So it's kind of fun.
Yeah, but unfortunately not everybody has that intensity, and sometimes you can coach it and other times, you can't. And that's what we wanted to talk about today, I've been racking my brain about this for the past week since I told you I wanted to hit this topic about what word I want to use. And the only word that comes to mind, you have a better one, by all means, is cowardice. There's a lot of cowardice in the weight room.
Ooh. Oh, that's a good question. If I had to put a word to it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that one's fair. I think that's a fair word to use. I don't know if I have a better one off the top of my head, but I'll accept that one.
Yeah, there's just a lot of cowardice. And by that, I mean, we live in a society of instant gratification, right? And we are in an industry that sells instant gratification, 12 weeks to, insert your fitness goal, right? And sometimes we get people that hire us or that, join my gym. Actually, nobody's joined here that's like this. I'm kind of tucked away, but they join a gym, right? And they think it's going to be fun and games to get, an extreme result, right? Like they want to get ripped, they want to get big, they want to get stronger, right? They want to pull 500. They just think it's just going to be fun. They look at it as recreation. And maybe when you're going through the novice effect the first month, it's that, it's recreational, it's fun. But then there comes a point, like with any skill, it's not fun anymore, and shit gets hard.
Right.
Shit gets unpredictable. You're trying to balance what you're doing here with your lifestyle, and, it's not easy. Easy is the last thing that it is. And you start getting the complaints when they miss their first rep, or if they miss a weight more than once, best case. And that's going to happen, like when you're no longer a novice, things are unpredictable until we figure out how your body responds to stress and how you respond to stress too, right? Like,
Right.
not everybody responds to stress the same way. And sometimes I have to make programming modifications because the psychological stress is too great. But this idea that it's going to be recreational to get from 100 to 500 on a deadlift, you know, or to gain, 15, 20 pounds of muscle mass, that's mythology. That's not what happens. It's not recreational. It's fun in the beginning. There are times where it's fun, but a lot of it is you're just kind of clocking in, clocking out, doing the work, doing a little bit more each time, right? And there will come a point where you're missing reps, or your sleep is shit, or your kids kept you up, or you didn't eat enough, and then you go into the gym and everything's stapled to the floor and you're tired. You're tired, right? And you're still going to show up. You're not going to stop fucking showing up. That's the last thing you want to do, but that's often what a lot of people want to do. That's where the cowardice thing comes in. It's like, okay, it got hard. I'm just going to stop, and then I'm going to, not do it for like a year. Then I'm going to do it again for real, and then recycle the same problem, right?
Right.
The issue with that is you are teaching yourself. This is kind of what dogs do. You're now reinforcing this behavioral pattern, and you're teaching yourself that it's okay to bail as soon as something gets hard. That's something I talk about a lot in different contexts here, but it's a habit that you're teaching yourself, and you'll do it with the weight room. You'll do it with guitar. You'll do it with, anything, If you have to teach your kids something, you'll probably give up and throw a temper tantrum, because you're tired, Fuck being tired, shit's not easy, It's one fucking hard thing after another. That's life,
I think it's, our friend Carl Shute is fond of sharing this quote, and I can't remember who it is off the top of my head. I believe it's G.K. Chesterton, but I might be misattributing this. But anyway, he says that anything worth doing is worth doing badly.
Absolutely.
And I like that. I really like that. He was in my mind. I'm not sure where the quote comes from, so I haven't read the source text. But in my mind, he's a champion. He's championing the amateur in that case, and I think part of this problem is fueled by social media. We were just sending videos like, a few days ago on Instagram. We were sending like posts back and forth with each other of this guy. I can't remember what his name is, but there's this guy who was like strict pressing 315 for 10.
Right.
And he pressed 405 for 2. I think he inclined 495 for like a set of 5 or something. Just these absurd numbers, right? And not like, it wasn't even that hard, or it didn't look that hard, right, in the video. He's not like he's struggling that much. And these are just like absurd, insane numbers to someone like me. And there's probably not, this guy's a nobody. I've never heard of him before. He's probably a competitive powerlifter or something, but it's not like he's Thor Bjornsson or something. He's not a celebrity.
No.
I'd never heard of him. And here's this dude doing these incredible feats of strength.
405 double.
Yeah, for a double.
Yeah,
it looks like he might even had 3. Well, I think this is one of the things that social media has done to us is we see the end result all the time in this media, and that's all it is, right? It's just the result of somebody's training cycle led them to this point that they're now posting on social media. And we never saw all the training that led up to that. And we're also people, there's a bias there that people who are really good at whatever the thing is, in this case, getting really strong, they're going to want to post more than people who aren't very strong. The guy that's struggling to get a 135 press is probably not going to be posting his stuff all over social media.
No,
sometimes,
no.
but not as often.
No.
And so I think a lot of people, and I feel for the younger kids here, I think a lot of people just are they see that and they're like, well, if I can't be that, then it's not worth doing.
That's right.
And I'm out. And I've seen that behavior a lot. I remember I was roommates with someone in college who had this a lot. Like he would not try at something so that if he failed, he could always say like, well, I didn't actually try that hard. If I tried, I would have done it. But it was a cop out, right? It's you can't fail if you don't try.
That's right.
And I see a lot of that nowadays. I sound like an old man. Nowadays, I see a lot of that.
Absolutely. Everybody wants easy,
But it's a lot. I think it's easier. It's never been easy. There's always been people that have been, that have taken the easy way out and quit. But I think it's easier to hang in there when you're surrounded by a smaller group of peers and you're not constantly looking at this huge pool of people who, that includes world-class lifters.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And that's the beauty of my gym and some of the other coaches' gyms is that you don't really get a lot of that. Somebody might accidentally develop into that, but that's rare. Most of the time you walk in here, it's just normal people,
Yeah.
And some stronger than others, some weaker than others, it varies. But everybody tends to show up and sometimes life pulls them away and they make their way back. But, I can't say that somebody's come in here and said, I'm just going to consciously make the decision to miss because I'm tired. I'd say, dude, I'm like, get fucked, like what tends to happen is, I'm just going to push this workout back. I'm going to push this workout back. I'm going to push this workout back. Then before you know it, they've fallen off and they come back. That's occupational hazard. That happens. Mm-hmm. But when somebody like tells you don't know what the fuck you're talking about, I'm taking a week off because I'm tired, you're fired. Simple as that. Insert Trump. Insert Trump there. And back 15 years ago or whatever. You're fired. What was that 20 years ago?
You got to do a little hand thing. Where you're like push your hand forward.
Yeah, but my point is that like there's a lot of things causing stress, right? You have the stress of the training. You have the stress of your life, right? My job is to try and make the training stress accommodate what the hell's going on with your life stress. And sometimes that means, you might be on an old man program, not because you're an old man, but because you're stressed out, from other shit, right?
Sure.
The goal is to keep showing up above all else. I'm tired. Go fuck yourself. I'm tired too, Right. So is Trent. Right. And so are all of us, we're all tired, you got to show up. It's like, you're going to stop brushing your teeth because you're tired, it's like, that's how I frame it to people, but there is going to come a point where, it's no longer the novice phase. You're no longer in the honeymoon phase as they use in other industries. And you have to troubleshoot problems. You have to troubleshoot, how could I show up and get something productive done? And there's various ways to do that. We talk about it on this show. But if you're just bailing from the first sign of stress, you're just setting yourself up for failure. You're never going to get anywhere. You're selling yourself short and you're teaching yourself bad habits.
Here's the deal. The number one way to fail at training.
Yeah.
And I'm saying the word fail in the correct context here. You know how I feel about that. The number one way to fail at training is to not show up. The second way is to not eat food.
Yep.
But here's the deal. Even people that show up regularly and they don't eat any food and they're really underweight, even they get stronger.
That's right.
Not a lot, they're severely hampered by their habits, but they do get stronger. So the only way to guaranteed fuck up your training is to not show up.
That's right.
And the people that I have trained that miss a lot of workouts, they spin their wheels a lot. And, part of it is just obvious, right? They're not getting the training stress because they're skipping workouts. But the other thing is we never get in a groove as a coach and a lifter, because you're talking about managing the programming around life. Okay, yeah, absolutely. That's what I do. But I can't do it if you don't show up to work out. I can't see how you respond to stress when you're not in the gym. And whether you are training with someone else or if you're trying to program for yourself, it's the same thing. You'll never get those data points if you don't show up. And especially true when you're tired. And the thing is, this has been my life for the last 2 years. And before that, I started a business at one point and left a job that was really stressful and took a lot of late nights. I worked to become a starting strength coach on the side. That was a lot of work and a lot of long nights. Well, I've been living this life for really the last several years, but especially the last 2 years since having a kid. Well, a lot of times I surprise myself at what I'm capable of physically. And I've built the habit over years of training now to go in there and put the effort in. So that's not a problem for me anymore, but sometimes I underestimate what I'm capable of, even when I'm tired and mentally, not 100% there because I've got so much other stuff going on in life. Sometimes my workouts suck and I underperform, but more often than not, I do better than I think I will once I get into it.
I went to the coaches conference a few weeks ago in Omaha on 3-hour sleep and got lost trying to park my car, barely got to the airport. I got to the thing as the gate was closing and I had one meal. I went to Qdoba and then I PR'd the deadlift, I almost
shouldn't have happened.
I almost skipped the deadlift. I came very close to skipping it that day. And then, I'd already warmed up because we've been doing a clean instruction with Rip. So, I was like, well, I've already started pulling. All right, might as well keep going, and did that. Right. Then I'm like, all right, well, I'll do the squats too, 360 for 5 sets of 5 or 4 sets of 5 after that. And I got it done. And then I was crashing pretty hard for the next day or two. My back was smoked.
Yeah, just smoked after that.
You get it done. You show up. You got to show up,
And that's the thing. You had a bunch of reasons. You could have said like, well, I didn't sleep. Like I should probably punt this to tomorrow or the next day or whatever. And, sometimes that's the right call, but it's a slippery slope, right?
Right.
And that's the thing. You tried it anyway. You're like, fuck it. Let's just go.
Hey, you just warm up. You see where you're at.
That's right.
Oh, And, I get a lot of guys, I had a guy that just stopped showing up for months and, I kept messaging him every week. He's an online client, never responded. Then finally he responded, like, I'm glad you kept messaging me. He was ashamed that he didn't show up,
Yeah.
I respect him. You should be. I'd be ashamed too. A little shame can light a fire under your ass, right? So what we're talking about is where you're just like, I'm just going to rest. I'm just not going to do it, It's like, there's the door, walk out, no refunds,
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, it's just, with that attitude, I can't help. There's nothing I can really do.
No, you can't fix that.
If you don't show up. I'm willing to do anything else, but I can't, someone who doesn't show up, I can't help. And you can't help yourself that way. So, I'm curious, like, why do you think this has happened? Because we like to talk about on this show, we like to talk about physical culture in general. And, back in my day, high school, we called these people quitters, right? That was the thing. You never wanted to be a quitter.
When you bench 315 in high school.
That's right. Yeah. It keeps going up the older I get. 270 becomes 275, becomes 300, becomes 315.
Yeah, everybody's bench 315 in high school except me.
Yeah, that's right. But yeah, I mean, I'm curious where this comes from. It's always been around. I remember plenty of kids who quit football in high school. That was the main sport that I played, was football. I remember plenty of kids who gave up. So this is a common experience in humans, but why do you think it is?
I think that it's just become more socially acceptable to quit, I mean, you hear all these jokes about participation trophies, this would be a great topic to get Steph going on because, she could say a lot about this, but, I think that it's just been like, you don't want to push yourself too hard. You don't want to get hurt. There's like a lot of like fear around getting hurt and not even physically hurt, just, safety in general. People are just,
oh, yes.
There's this hyper awareness of every possible safety risk there is. And at the end of the day, you're unsafe everywhere if you kind of go by that. Like I was just bitching yesterday about how the fucking hikes in Phoenix, the mountains are closed now during extreme temperatures, which means the entire summer you can only hike in the morning and at night, after dawn, before dusk. So now you have limited hours, and it's all because some people go up there, don't properly hydrate, and then die. Then they got to helicopter them down, right? So now they got to punish everybody for that, right? And it's in the name of safety, right? But people have been hiking these mountains for decades at the least, centuries probably. They're natives down here, Yeah,
I was about to say, there's probably some natives that have been doing it for a long, long time.
That's what I'm saying. But my point is, like, I drink plenty of water, get plenty of electrolytes, and I don't have a problem hiking in the summer. I can hike when it's 120 out. I just make sure I take care of myself, right? And there's, safety precautions that you are responsible for taking, right? But now, because people have died, there's all this fear porn about hiking in the summer, in Arizona. Meanwhile, people have been doing it for a while, right? Or like park hours, right? That's the one that really pisses me off. Like, when you're in the city of Scottsdale or the city of Phoenix, of course, cities, right? And some county parks. It's like, okay, we're only open after dawn and before dusk, and you have to be out by dusk. And I'm like, well, what the fuck? Basically, anybody who works can't hike now, And then you sit there and put this stuff out about wanting to be more active, and it's like, oh, for your safety? It's like, what? Because some people are dumbasses. I can hike at night. It's called a headlamp,
Yeah,
bring a dog. You can bring a dog with you. You can, bring a firearm with you if there's wildlife to worry about. There's a lot of options there,
Sure.
But it's just these are just prime examples of, like, think about it. They just instituted these rules, which means even 5 years ago, those rules weren't in place with the heat, at least. I don't know when the park hours started, but now they got these electrified gates that close, to make sure that you don't, put yourself at risk, of, falling off the mountain. It's like, dude, you're hiking a mountain. You know what's funny? California, you can surf, and you don't know when you're going to get bit by a shark. There's a chance that a shark will eat you, and you're allowed to surf.
Well, I was about to say, I bet the risk of drowning from surfing is way higher than the risk of anything you do hiking.
Probably, yeah, but
I feel like anything involved in the water, that's way more risky.
Yeah, and I'm for the life of me, like, I hate fucking government, but I'm trying to figure out, I'm like, man, if there's one hill I'd die on, start gathering signatures and get something on the ballot, it would be to eliminate park hours. But, I don't know if I could fight all that safety propaganda that would come out saying, oh my God, your children are going to die because they're going to sneak out of your house and get in the park at night and fall off the mountain, or get eaten by a mountain lion.
Right.
But
the safety has become like, it's almost like the unassailable excuse, like if you're like, well, I don't have time, or don't have, I was too stressed out, or whatever, then it's like, well, people can see through those excuses pretty easily.
Yeah.
But safety is like, it's like the last bastion. It's like, well, I don't want to get hurt. I don't want to lift that heavy weight. I don't want to get hurt.
Right.
And it's almost like, well, oh yeah, that's very reasonable. Don't want to get hurt. That's eminently reasonable.
And you should never get hurt. There's this expectation that you should never get hurt. You should never make a mistake. That nothing should ever be. Nothing should ever happen.
And I would always say, like, not that this was really that much of an issue in Fort Worth, but when I did coach in Fort Worth, I'm like, if you drove to the gym, then you were already in more danger than you will ever be inside this gym.
That's right.
Like, if you drove, especially if you drove on the highway. So, like, when I'm driving to the gym back and forth every day, when I had to get on I-35, driving from Fort Worth to Keller, that is dangerous. That is very dangerous. In fact, I saw a lot of wrecks. One time I saw a car that was on fire. It was pretty kind of funny. I saw it on the way out from the gym. I saw a car that was on fire. It was in the shoulder, somewhere on 35. And I saw it on the coming back to the gym later in the evening, and it was the most burnt object I've ever seen. It was just like every single aspect of that car had burned. Like, all of the paint was completely and utterly burnt, and the whole thing was just like a dull gray. I was kind of impressed. I didn't know anything could burn that much. It was just like this weird gray shell. But anyway, I saw stuff like that all the time driving out there. That's dangerous. And people do that all the time, right? So the safety thing, it's impossible. You can't, there's no way to avoid that. Even if you could somehow live in a bubble, like the bubble boy from Seinfeld. You remember that guy?
Yeah, you're not going to never feel like shit, like.
Yeah. Even if you could do that, that still has its own risk, right? Doing nothing has a lot of risk.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah, I think I have a theory.
Yeah.
I think it seems to be less common nowadays for young people to get involved in sports or like hard physical activities. And I think it was more common in the past. Like, we are of the generation where we grew up, as kids at least, without the internet. I didn't really have practical access to the internet until I was 14 or 15, and it was real slow,
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
if y'all are wondering what that sound is in the background, I don't know if you can hear it. There's a massive thunderstorm happening right here. So hopefully it doesn't knock me offline.
Right.
We lost power last week for 2 straight days because of a huge thunderstorm. So knock on wood. But
Yeah.
back to my point. I didn't really have access to the internet until high school. And even then it was pretty slow. It was dial-up. Now,
Yeah.
some people that I knew had DSL, but it was expensive and it wasn't that, my parents weren't going to pony up for it. So practically, I really couldn't spend too much time inside. There was a limit to what could hold your attention. And so we spent a lot of time outside. And it was just all the dumb shit the teenagers get into, right? Like we'd have airsoft wars and we'd, shoot the hell out of each other. And of course, the guy that has the CO2 powered pistol rather than like the, electric powered pistol, his shoots really, really hard and is really painful. So everybody else it's like an arms race. Everybody else has got to get one.
Of course.
And, and then we start
kick in.
Yeah. So then we all, we start shooting each other with these like high powered, like air pellets and air rifles. Yeah, we did a lot of those kind of things on top of sports. And I think there's something foundational in doing hard physical activity as a kid, whether it's in organized sports or outside of that teaches you about effort and not quitting when it gets hard and when it hurts.
Yeah, learning how to push that's where the skill of strength really kicks in. You hear that term thrown around a lot. To the point where I've mentioned it many times, like I did a couple years of high reps, and one of the hardest things I had to get back to was pushing those heavy weights when they're 5 or less reps with a lot of weight, And I'm still kind of dealing with that. Like I never really got good at squatting over 400, from a skill component. Like every time it would get over 4, I would feel crushed by it, and I would just find a way to get it up, and it's not sloppy. You can look at old videos, but I never felt command over it like I do other lifts, right?
Right.
So this time I've been really focusing on that, and I have to psych myself up more. There's a lot that goes into it. There's a lot of anxiety,
Mm-hmm,
and there's the whole mind fuck of shit. Rep 4 was almost, I
limit.
barely got that. It was a limit.
Yeah.
Then I do rep 5, and then I look at the video and it's like, no, rep 4 wasn't. It looks, pretty normal,
Exactly.
And I know that.
Yeah.
And I know this, and it used to not be a problem because I did it for so long and built up to it, But now that like I had that break, I'm like, man, I don't think I'll ever do high reps again,
Right. Yeah. It's hard. It's hard. You have to find this new notch. And we were talking about this after the little meet that we did. So my client, I don't think he'll mind me giving him a little shout out. Chris Young pulled 585, 6 plates here. And it was a great pull. We were talking about the experience of that. And I've never pulled 585, so I don't really know. But I remember what it was like to pull 405 the first time, and what it was like to pull 500.
Right.
And I feel this more keenly with the deadlift because there's no bounce, there's no rebound in a deadlift. But it's true of all the lifts to some extent, and that's that. It's not like you get to 500 and it feels like 405 did when you were weaker. It feels worse. It just keeps getting more and more crushingly hard. And the experience of your body being compressed and trying not to get completely folded up, it gets more and more and more intense. It never stops. It never gets easier.
And go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, like, you could contrast that with a squat, let's say, and it's that, it feels heavier in your back, but there is a little bit of a stretch reflex involved. There's a little bit of a bounce, so you can groove a squat better or worse, from rep to rep. But a deadlift, 1 rep pulled from the floor from a dead stop where there's no consecutive reps. There's none of that, right? It's just hard concentric. So it's like the purest feeling of this phenomenon we're talking about. But that's the thing. He's pulled 500. He's pulled 550. Now he's pulled 585. Guess what? It just gets harder and harder and harder.
Never easier. I mean, there are different levels of this shit, and we'll sit there and say, yeah, strength is relative, and sure, but these absolute loads matter too. Like, there's just different layers of hard the further down that rabbit hole you get. And, I talk to guys who are big, the 250, 500 is double body weight for them. That is still not the same as, 380 for me,
Right.
And they explain it. They're like, yeah, 500 is still fucking heavy. I knew a 700-pound deadlifter who once told me 500's heavy, and he would have to deadlift it. It's just there's different layers of hard, and you have to overcome that. I mean, most people listening probably aren't going to pull those kind of numbers. I'm not going to pull 700, so don't take that as a, recommendation that you need to spend a lifetime trying to pull 700. That's not what we're saying. But, let's say you're going from 2 to 300. That's one layer of difficulty. Then 3 to 400. That's another layer of difficulty. And the further down the rabbit hole you get to try and push more and more adaptation, i.e. get stronger, the more demanding that's going to be, and it's going to challenge you psychologically too, I've said it before, strength teaches you to deal with fear, endurance training teaches you to deal with pain.
Yeah, no, I think that's very accurate. And that comes back to what you said, cowardice. Yeah, I think the flip side of that would be bravery, right? And that's what it takes to get underneath a bar that you're not sure that you can lift. It takes some bravery. Now, it's a different degree of bravery than a guy running into a burning building to save some of his
of course, yeah,
teammates in combat, right? So I'm not trying to,
that guy would show up to his workouts though.
That's right. But it is to a smaller degree. It's the same kind of thing though, right? Getting up underneath a bar that you're not sure you can do, but you try it anyway. And you've got the anxiety, the butterflies start kicking in, but you do it anyway. You just try it, and you try your hardest. Yeah, that's bravery. And Uncle Aristotle talks about, and really even Plato talks about this too. What is virtue, right? These ancient Greeks were concerned with the question of virtue, and the word that we have now, virtue. It comes from a Latin root, but there's also an earlier Greek root, and that was arete. Hopefully I'm saying that correctly. But it meant excellence. That's one of the ways you can translate that into English. So virtue to them was an action it's something you do. It's not a quality that you have. It's something that you do. And so to them, to say that you're brave, well, that means that you do and have done brave things. It's not like this thing that you can possess without ever displaying it, right? And so the way that you would acquire bravery then would be to go and do brave things, right? Seems pretty obvious, but there's a lot of people who I think would lay claim to oh yeah, I could be brave, but they don't actually do anything brave.
Well, it's time to, yeah.
So you're not brave, right? You can't claim that, right? It's not true. You can say it all you want, but it's not true. It only becomes true in the doing of it, right? And that's the process of acquiring virtue. Now, why would you care about virtue? Well, it's a more, acquiring virtue leads to a more fulfilling life.
Right.
You learn more about what you're capable of, and it has crossover, right? You learn to be brave underneath a squat bar, and it carries over into other parts of life. When you encounter something hard, you're like, well, I don't know what to do here, but I'm not going to quit, and I'm going to show up, and I'm going to keep trying. And you learn how to do that underneath a bar in a very controlled environment, training with a very controlled process of adding a little bit of weight every time you lift. And when you learn that, it makes it easier to, I don't know, I'm just picking an example that's close to the heart. Wake up at 3 a.m. with the screaming baby, and then, and hold them all night. And you're like, I don't know what to do. Maybe there is nothing to do, but just endure. But you can do that and not give up and not quit because you've done other hard things in life. And training just happens to be a really good one.
A cheap one, easy one,
Yeah, yeah. It has a lot of benefits. We talk about the physical benefits all the time, but these other intangible benefits are part of it too.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it transfers over, if you do one hard thing and see it through and get, into a fairly advanced state with it, it teaches you something about, not just dealing with fear, but there's an endurance component too. There's an endurance component to strength training, because to sit there, miss the 4th rep 3 fucking weeks in a row, and then have to figure out why that's happening and try something else, and then miss the 4th rep again, and then try something else. Like that's an endurance deal right there. You're dealing with pain and
Right.
you're dealing with fear,
Yeah.
So it's, quite the interesting thing. But then let's say you want to go learn another skill and you get through that honeymoon phase where, everything's easy in the beginning. And then you get past that and it's like, why can't I reproduce this result every time, Same thing, go learn an instrument. You know that better than anybody, Trent. You learn an instrument.
Right.
In the beginning, I would imagine that things happen pretty quick, but then it gets to a point where like there's these basics that are inconsistent. I remember that with DJing, I always think of, just learning how to match beats. I kind of got the basics down. Then I'm like, well, fuck, why can't I get it like all the way right? Like these other guys that have been doing it for 10 years. And then somehow in year 3 or 4, it was like, oh, there we go. I'm not thinking about it anymore. It's like breathing, And that's the same thing with your squat technique. That's the same thing with, pushing a heavy weight. You learn these things and eventually the basics become like breathing air, It's just getting through that phase. The endurance part of this is that early intermediate to solid intermediate phase where it's up and down, left and right, in and out. You're good one week, you're bad another week. Like once you get past those predictable gains of weekly linear progression and you're into, well, shit, why did I miss this week? It was easy last week. Why did it go from 5 reps to 1 rep? Like that is the weed out phase, in my opinion.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And, things get streaky because, you hang in long enough and you get these like runs 4 to 6 weeks where like shit's just moving, and why? I don't know. There's so many factors, but it is like, just enjoy it. And then, don't forget about the grindy phase that you had to go through before the streak happened when it gets grindy again, when the streak is over. It does. It takes a lot of fortitude to get through that. I'm remembering something that I credit. I give a lot of credit to my ability to endure and persist. If I have any physical talent, it's really just that I won't quit. I just persevere. I'm not a good athlete. I was never a good football player. I played, I was able to get on the field and play regularly in varsity, but I wasn't a star athlete. I mostly played on special teams. I got into the game on defense a little bit, but I did get to play. It wasn't because of my athleticism, that's for sure. But I just, I was able to mentally just go 100% on every play. But that didn't just, come out of nowhere. I credit a lot of that to the way that our coaches trained us. And what I remember is that in the off season, we had our football period. It was the last period of class. And of course it would go after school too, right? So it was roughly 2 to 3 hours, this block, because we had the 1.5 hour long period and we'd stay 1 hour to 1.5 hours after school as part of one big long practice. But this was the off season. So we were doing strength and conditioning. And we would do, I believe it was every other day for sure, but we would do Monday, Wednesday, Friday weight room. Tuesday, Thursday was conditioning. So we'd be out, and this is January, so it's actually pretty cold in North Texas. We'd be out in the field with our cleats and shorts and running just calisthenics and drills, doing stuff like monkey rolls and running routes and squares and running giant laps around the whole campus and stuff. And because I played in defense, the defensive coordinator was in charge of our overall workout. Offensive coordinator was in charge of the offense's workout. Well, the thing that the defensive coordinator did was we would not leave the field until offense was done. We would always go after them. Always.
Right.
Like it's just, and every once in a while they would decide, like, okay, well, we're not going to leave until y'all leave. Okay. So we'd be out there for 4 hours. It's like 6:30 and we're still fucking running around, and we're just dying, everybody's puking everywhere. And, you got blisters and your hands are raw because, you're on this just torn up field. And we wouldn't, they would have to break first. So, that's a stupid way to train from the perspective of actually getting strong and conditioned. That's stupid, right? Right. But it actually did teach us something important, which is to endure and to, mentally to endure, especially when you don't know when the end is coming. And that's hard. That's a very different skill than enduring something where the duration of what you're going to do, right? If you're like, I got to run a mile. Okay, maybe a mile's easy for you. Maybe it's really hard, but there's an end to it. It's like once the mile's up, you're done. You get to relax. You get to lay down. What if you have to run and you have no idea how long? Could be a mile, could be 10 miles, could be 35 miles. Could be 500 miles.
Yeah, it's a whole other animal.
It's a whole other animal. And so we did a lot of that kind of stuff. And looking back on it, I'm like, that actually taught me a lot about just having, finding that reservoir mentally to hang in there and keep going. And I believe that's kind of what we want to recreate to some extent in our own training, right? Yeah. Now we know what the end is. We have a plan. We're going to do 5 reps.
That's right.
So there is an end, but when you're, having that experience is the difference between giving up on a workout, giving up on a set, and hanging in there and at least trying it, right? At least making the attempt.
Your stress tolerance goes up quite a bit.
Yeah. So I think, but if you don't have that, if you get to adulthood and you haven't had some experience like that, for you it's probably in the pool, right?
Oh yeah. Pool. I used to
I'm sure there's some brutal practices there. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It was crazy. You had to wake up at 5 a.m, in the water by 6. It was Chicago. So you're already cold. Then you're jumping into cold water. Yeah. You do it for 2 hours. You go to class all day. You go back afterwards, another 2 to 3 hours. And during winter break, you do it on the weekends too,
Yeah. It's brutal.
Yeah. It was crazy. Just like thousands and thousands of miles.
So, I relate all this because this is an experience that some people have.
Yeah.
When they're young, but not everybody has it. And so if you reach adulthood and you haven't had this kind of experience or the equivalent of it, you're going to have to go through something like that to learn. And you have to understand this is where some people are coming from. This is the experience that some people have had and where they're coming from when they're training, if you're trying to compare yourself to others. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't really have a good answer of how to teach that, how to walk somebody through that other than just to point it out and be encouraging and just point out effort and lack of effort when it's there, right? When I see it.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. And it's, on one hand, yeah, I'm being a dick. I'm giving you shit, I'll admit it. But on the other hand, it's for your own good, I'm not going to enable you being a coward. If you're going to tell me that you are choosing to be a coward and that is your choice, then I'm going to tell you the cons of that because you've paid me money for my expertise and I'm going to share it with you. I'm going to tell you that it's bullshit and you're basically teaching yourself bad habits, and I will use a lot more colorful language, if you and I are having this discussion.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
we're not supposed to pat you on the back and tell you it's okay. That's not what a coach does,
That's right.
That's not what we do. We're going to tell you it's bullshit. Somebody needs to. Just like somebody needs to tell me that my, 515 deadlift is bullshit, Like somebody needs to do that so that I can push harder, Like I'm with Rip on that. There's productivity there. If you're trying to accomplish something, then the bar has to keep going up until, you're done, obviously, And only you can decide that, But if you're done before it even starts, no, fuck that. I'm not letting you off the hook there.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. We've got to be honest with ourselves, right? Yeah. If you want to quit because, you don't want to try that hard and you don't want to put the effort in, just say it. Just admit that to yourself. But don't get frustrated about a lack of results when you've also willfully skipped training and you've given up on the workout. And this is where our pet word failure comes into play. Right. There's only really two ways that you fail a workout or you fail a set. One is if you bail in the middle of the set, right? You give up on the set.
That's right.
You said that in an Instagram post. It was great. You said you only fail if you bail.
That's right.
I love that. That's exactly right. There's a second way to fail though. And that's when you just don't even try it in the first place.
Right.
I don't know. I didn't think I would get it, or I don't think I don't know. I was kind of feeling a little like sore here, or I was just really tired from the night before, and you just don't even try. When you don't even attempt it, that's a failure.
You have shorted yourself by doing that. You've shorted yourself the experience of having to deal with that,
Mm-hmm. That's right. Exactly. So that's, I'm not sure what else there is to say about that.
Yeah, I don't have anything else to add
know?
about that. Don't be a coward. I have another word in mind. I'm not going to say it here. Don't be a coward. Show up. Load the bar with what you're supposed to do. Try it. If it doesn't work, take 10% off. Finish that. You got punishment sets too, people. Just because you got 3 doesn't mean the set's over. You owe me 2 more,
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, and that's a good point. So we should just hit on that really quickly. So if you're wondering, like, so what do you do if you load up your work set and you try it and you actually fucking try? That's what does that look like on a bar? That means that, like, I want to see minimum 5 hard seconds of grinding against that bar.
That's right.
You got to push hard on that bar for at least 5 seconds, and you can do it a lot longer than that. You can, look at some of my videos; they're really grindy lately.
Oh yeah, I've done
somewhere out there. My first 500 attempt is it was like a 13-second deadlift. It was miserable, and I missed it like mid thigh. I just couldn't lock it out. But yeah, that's what a grind looks like, by the way.
Yeah.
So there's that. And then if you actually put in that level of effort and you really honestly tried hard at it and you miss, then I always say take a minute or 2, maybe 3 minutes if you need it, and come back to it and try it again. Because sometimes something was wrong with your setup or you're making a technical error and it goes the next time.
Yep.
When you do that and it's just stapled, right? There's just nothing's happening there. That's when you do exactly what you just said. You need to drop the weight a little bit, not a lot. Here's the thing. You need to have some numbers in your head of how much to drop the weight, because I've run into people who will drop the weight like 30%.
Right.
And finish out sets and you're like, that's just bullshit.
That's bullshit. Yeah.
You went back to warm-ups essentially.
Yeah.
5 to 10% is a good sort of rule of thumb there. It depends on what you're doing. Yeah, to start, right? So if you're doing like presses, I'd say 5%. Try that first. If you're doing a squat or deadlift, probably 10%. Take 10% off the bar and then finish out whatever the number of reps you had for your work sets. If you're going to do 3 sets of 5, do 15 total reps at that adjusted weight.
Yeah, if you owe me 5 or 15, you got to give me 5 or 15, not 14, not 3, You got to do it. You don't just say, well, I missed, I'm going home. You got to do your punishment set. That's why it's called that. Yeah. So, I think we hammered that pretty good, don't you think?
Yeah, I think so. I think so.
We can keep bitching, but I don't think y'all want to hear that.
It was a good old fashioned bit session. Yelling at clouds.
Yeah. Therapy, man. Therapy.
I love how if you go back and read old literature, there's always the like hard ass old guy that's the same character. He's the same. It doesn't matter like what century or millennia you go back to.
Yep.
There's always that guy. I love. He's in the Iliad. So like literally the earliest literature that we have in the Western world is Homer, the Iliad and the Odyssey. And there's this character Nestor, who's in the Greek army, trying to siege Troy, and Nestor's an old guy, right? He fought with guys that are the dads of the soldiers of a lot of the soldiers in the Greek army. So he's the old guy, and he's always ranting about like, I fought with gods, and you're swine, you're these. Anyway, old man yelling at clouds. It's great.
Yeah,
but it's true. This is part of the human experience, and I don't know, like one of the things that training has done for me has made me want to live more of life. I want to experience more of life, not less of it. I don't want to shy away from experiences in life. And but I had to learn that, and it's not something that you learn, especially in our modern world where there's all sorts of distractions and things that will kind of sort of like comfort you as you hide away from life experiences. And I don't know, that's just me. I want to experience more of life, not less of it. And training is one little piece of this. And it's that reinforcement for me that this process, what we just described, is that practice that I use to stay in touch with like actually putting effort out in the world and trying to acquire some of that virtue of bravery that we were talking about.
I think you summed it up quite nicely there.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
all right.
I got
Where can people go and go and sign up with you so you can yell at them for being cowards.
Yeah, if you want to get yelled at by me, you can find me at weightsandplates.com, on Instagram at _Robert_Santana. I'm here in Phoenix. We got a gym. It's called Weights and Plates Gym. It's just south of the airport in the South Mountain Village. Come check us out. And yeah, how about you, Trent?
Yeah, if you want me to do the same to you in my own style. So we have different styles here. We're like DJs, right? We've got different styles.
That's right.
If you want to experience that with my flavor, then you can go email me, jonesbarbellclub@gmail.com, and ask about online coaching. I do offer online coaching to a limited group of people. I usually cap it off at about 30 people, but I do have some open slots now. So if you want to sign up, you're interested in signing up, email me there, jonesbarbellclub@gmail.com.
Excellent.
All right, y'all. We'll talk to you again in a couple weeks.